the Building Business Podcast, powered by the Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce. We're here recording in the Charleston Media Solutions studios. Thank you, Brian Cleary, huge supporters of the Chamber. I'm so excited, Mike, to talk about our first podcast sponsor, because if you listened to last month's podcast with Emily Zuhowski, we kind of teased and then said, even though the ink wasn't dry,
yet,
that we had our first sponsor. And now,
here they are.
Here they are.
Viking Mergers and Acquisitions.
Signed.
Done deal.
Signed, sealed, delivered.
Somebody thinks that we're useful.
I know. I'm
somebody
really
sees
excited.
value in this.
And they must actually see real value, because you'll find out in 2 minutes who our special guest is for today. My name is Kathy Herman. I am the past president of the Chamber of Commerce. I am the current chair of the Rise Women in Business Committee, and I'm the marketing director at Mount Pleasant Town Center. I am joined once again by my favorite co-host, Mike Compton.
Hey, folks.
Mike is co-owner of Rumbo Advertising, the former chair of the Chamber Marketing Committee. Again, kudos to Darius, who's taken over for you.
Right.
Great,
Is he
great
crushing
job.
it or what?
Crushing,
Did,
of course.
did I pick the right guy?
You sure did.
Of course.
And Mike
He's been working with us for
years.
years.
He's amazing. He really is. And Mike is the current president of the Charleston American Marketing Association. Mike, thank you for being here again.
Thank you for having me again.
I'm so excited for today.
I know. Well, we've got a really interesting topic today. I know, some people might think it's boring, but I think it's super fascinating. We've got Mike Purcell of Viking Mergers and Acquisitions in the house.
Yes, he's senior advisor.
Talk about that, Mike.
Yeah, senior advisor.
Senior advisor.
Senior advisor.
Okay, what does that mean?
It just means you're a little bit grayer.
That's good. That's what I was looking for. That's exactly what I was looking for.
That's awesome. Listen, we're so excited, of course, because not only is Michael with us, but this is our first podcast, official podcast with our sponsor, and so we're so lucky to have you here today to kind of kick off this continued relationship. Viking Mergers and Acquisitions. Tell us a little bit about it, how it started and where it is right now.
Yeah, so 2026 actually marks the 30th anniversary of Viking Mergers and Acquisitions.
Wow,
So,
that's a long time.
It is. So 1996, Brad Offerdahl and his son Jay started Viking in Charlotte. Single
Charlotte.
office.
What's up, Charlotte? We see
We
you,
don't
Charlotte.
have a lot of
We're big in
listeners.
Charlotte.
Yeah, I thought so.
Second
A lot of
most listeners in Charlotte. It's weird.
yeah,
more in Charlotte than Charleston.
Awesome. Well, shout out to the Charlotte team.
That's what I'm saying.
So the why behind them starting this was because Brad had owned and sold a couple of businesses himself, and he felt that the small business market could use a higher level of professionalism in terms of representing sellers and selling the business. So he and Jay started that with that purpose in mind. In 2015, Jay took over as president by himself with a mission to then expand out of Charlotte. And so we now have 18 offices throughout. We'll say the Southeast, but as far north now as Philadelphia, as far west as Austin, Texas.
Okay.
And so our Charleston office was office number 4, started in 2017 by Ben Knight.
Mr. Ben Knight.
Who I think all the Chamber's members know.
He's the guy.
The chairman of the Expo committee.
If you haven't been to the Expo yet, you got to go to the Expo.
That's absolutely right.
Do we have a date for the Expo yet?
Yeah.
Hold on, listeners. We got a date for next year's Expo. Since September. Oh, it's sometime in September. That's cool. But you got to go to the Expo in September. You went to the Expo, didn't you?
I went. That was. I started in August, so that was my first week on the job.
Oh, wow.
Oh, they really threw you into the tank there, in the shark tank.
And then they're throwing you here with us today. Wow, they must really like you.
No kidding. Let's see what this guy can do.
Fabulous.
Oh,
September 17th. Yeah, that's awesome.
That day.
Oh, yeah.
Weird.
Oh.
So speaking of old. Anyways, enough about me, Mike. It's about you.
No, really, this is really exciting. We love working with Ben. I am always very curious about things like this because I work with a lot of small businesses, and what I'm assuming is that you assist them. Like, again, I need a little bit more background, but you assist them with either buying or selling, or tell our listeners who own their own business what kind of services you provide.
Exactly. So our clients, we almost exclusively represent business owners who are selling, right?
Okay.
Okay.
So when you buy a business, you can also get representation that way, but typically we're representing the sellers as their clients. But for the buyers, we're actually, the relationship with them is as customer, right? So we're working with both, but our fiduciary responsibility, if you will, is to the business owners themselves.
Okay.
In terms of helping them prepare for that event, of selling, understanding what their business is worth,
Okay.
and then they decide to move forward, moving through that process, which is pretty complex.
I guarantee you that's why you're 18 offices deep nationwide now.
Well, I mean, I
18
think about
offices.
how many documents I signed just to buy my house. I couldn't imagine selling a business.
Right.
250 checklist items on
Dude,
the checklist. So
Dude, oh my gosh.
a lot of business owners don't realize that.
Can you 250 items on your checklist? Can you name the top 10?
No, I mean, they're all important.
They're all important. Guaranteed.
ID.
I mean, we've got all the legal things that have to happen.
Okay.
And one of the most important ones can often be because the way these transactions happen, if you think about a balance sheet, where on the top you've got assets, on the bottom you've got liabilities and equity. Most of the transactions that we facilitate are asset purchases, right? So it's the purchase of the assets, and the acquirer actually forms a different business entity.
Okay.
And so all the contracts that exist for the business have to be transferred to the acquiring
Of
company.
course.
And so sounds simple, but it's a lot of detail to, you got landlord, you got leases, you've got maybe vendor agreements, you've got, customer agreements. So those are the minutia that we tend to in the process.
So the chamber's full of businesses, obviously small businesses, medium-sized businesses, even bigger businesses.
Even big ones.
Yeah. What I wanted our listeners to get out of this is what could they do ahead of time to be in front of the game and then call you with their business? Like, what can we do as business owners to be better prepared to either be merged or acquired?
Exactly. So if you think about this, it almost seems like it's kind of the end game, right? Selling the business, but I would say that
But it's not always, right?
Not at all, because even starting a business, right? An entrepreneur either starting or taking ownership of a business, they're just trying to grow the business, right? Find customers. Thinking about how you're going to exit is not top of mind. But
Correct.
once you're established, the key question is, how do I want to run this business? Do I want to be the main, person behind the counter, if you will? There's no wrong choice, but some business owners just choose to be more engaged in the business. That's a conscious choice, but that can impact, their ability to sell it further on. On the other hand, if a business owner says, I want to make a good living out of this business, but I want to build wealth, sell the business at the end, it's important that they kind of get that squared up front, because that influences how they're going to run the business. If you really want to grow the business, you've got to put in place good processes, business processes, key performance indicators, hire good people, right, to manage functions so that you, the owner, don't have to be as engaged in the day-to-day.
Right.
So that's really kind of the middle phase 2. And then phase 3 is, maybe 3 years from that event, really getting an understanding of what the business is worth, what that process is going to look like for you, and ultimately, then engaging. And so we typically at least want to engage with owners, kind of in that 3-year out time cycle.
3 years, huh?
But, CPAs, accountants, wealth advisors, other advisors are critical to that kind of that middle stage of the process, to really working with the business owner to help them understand how all those pieces fit together.
Almost like a coach type of thing?
Yeah, coaches as well.
Yeah, almost like a hold on, stand by. Hold all calls, please.
See, they're already calling for you. Somebody wants to sell a business.
Oh, we're on line 1, right?
I'm always curious too, because if a small business is bought, I started this microphone company, right? And I've made $1 gazillion, but I'm ready to I don't want to be in charge anymore. And, Sony comes down and wants to buy my business. Is it beneficial for me to stay on for a little while? Like, do the buyers want me to stay for a little bit, or do they just want my business and get me out of here? Or is it individual?
A little bit of both. It depends on the buyer, right? So,
Because I know my company better than they're ever going to know my company, right?
and it depends on the seller. I mean, some sellers are like, okay,
I'm done.
I
Yeah.
want to get done as quickly as I can.
Right.
They understand. So the, minimal case scenario is, the buyer wants some transition period, right? To transition the business, and the seller doesn't want to stay too long. So you might have a month of consulting and transitionary type of work that would happen in that scenario. But on the other extreme, if you have a buyer that's a private equity firm, for example, there it may be the case that, okay, you're going to stay involved, as the previous owner. In fact, you might even roll over ownership in the new entity, and be on the management team at that point. So, but the seller has to be ready to sign up for that. Typically that's what a private equity firm would want, existing management to continue on in some capacity.
Interesting. Yeah. I feel like every deal is different.
Every deal's
It has to be, yeah.
Isn't it?
Everything's has to have its own conditions and things like that, right? Because kind of following up on what the question I just asked is one of the things we always think about is if I built my business, I built my microphone business, and I love my employees and I've built this amazing culture. As an owner, I'd be really scared to sell to, I'm again making up Sony, sell to Sony and afraid for my employees that they're not going to keep that culture. Like, how do you, I'm assuming you have to work with the owners to make them feel a little bit more comfortable, or does that even come up?
Oh, that's every time.
I would hope so.
It's a huge thing. Some cases more than others, right? But that is one of the most frequent concerns, particularly for someone who's built a business themselves. They've had employees who have been with them who've even retired from their business, right? Have provided a living for these folks, right? So they want to make sure that whoever comes in can kind of continue not only their legacy, but treat their employees well. So that's something we try to find out, up front, like what are their objectives in terms of that? Because sometimes the best offer is not the best deal, right? And we've seen that happen where ultimately the successful buyer has to be one which can gel with, the culture and the people. Because otherwise, then there's just not a recipe for success.
Mm-hmm.
So Kathy's microphone business. I love it.
I just,
I love
because
it.
everything today, yes.
Microphone right in front
What
of
are
you.
you
So
looking
that
to
makes
sell,
actually. So if she's ready to sell, then does she kind of go through almost like an interview process with other, like, you're kind of like the coach, and then are you also maybe the, what's the word I'm looking for, broker of the deal, where you get multiple buyers in front of her and then she can kind of find what gels? Like, is that part of?
That's in a summary. But we
I tend to dump things down very well.
I mean,
He does that for me, okay? He does that for me.
really the first step would be, as we try to do, we would talk with you in depth about, what are your motivations to sell? Let's understand your business, understand, to really spend some time with you, understanding your personal motivations, getting a handle on the quality of the business. Do you have things in order, your financials? So we take a pretty close look at that to even come to a, decision on, is this something, that we should do evaluation on to help you understand the value. So, we tend to be somewhat selective in that, businesses that are on a kind of a downward trajectory are ones that we find that we're not a good fit for, or those that don't have clean financials and books and records.
You don't want to get messed up with that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so if all those things are good, then, we would conduct evaluation for your microphone company, and come to you and say, this is not what we say it's worth, but what the market at this point in time would most likely be willing to value it at, right? And so then you can make a decision like, okay, I don't think we, rarely if ever have a business owner say, gosh, that's a lot more than I thought it was worth, right? It's always, I thought it was 2 times this.
Exactly, right.
And so part of it is to objectively inform the business owner, this is what the market is saying right now.
Okay.
And so then if we would decide to move forward, then we get into that process of going under a listing agreement and very confidentially, of course, then marketing the business, doing it in a way that does not disclose who the business is, right? And you have to be very careful about that because, even in our listing copy, right? People look at that, and if they try to discern who the business is, that can be detrimental.
Oh, right. So you really you list them without the actual name of the business?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so you'd say a amazing microphone business based out of Mount Pleasant, South Carolina.
We might say
is up for sale.
Southeast.
That generic. Okay.
They know who you are. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. They would know who I am. Of course they would.
Of course they would.
It's my
Kathy.
company. Right, Ben? That's right.
But to your point of the buyers, I mean,
Yes.
there's a process where we spend a good deal of time vetting the buyers beforehand, both for their individual financial qualifications, the ability to actually complete the acquisition from a financial standpoint, but even their background and skill set, are they a fit? Because we have, anywhere upwards of 1,500 buyer inquiries a month across our network. For the businesses that last year we sold 57 businesses. So do the math on that. It's over a couple hundred on average per business. And so we certainly wouldn't subject you to that many.
Right.
So we screen out down to a smaller pool. We want to have a competitive pool of buyers potentially interested in your business so that, when it comes down to it, you're getting the best terms. You can be in a position to, have more negotiating power.
I can't wait to build another business. Have you guys merge or sell it?
Yeah. Well, that was my next question too. Have you ever worked with a client that perhaps wanted to sell and then found the perfect person to merge with instead? Has that ever happened?
We do have
I'm assuming that merger is when you merge together, and acquisition is when you
Well, that
get
is
taken over, right? In simple terms, in Mike
Thank
terms.
you. No, in Mike terms.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
so that is an important distinction. So a true merger, right, is typically more of a stock transaction. So the acquirer is really, kind of buying the whole balance sheet, as
Okay.
opposed to the assets.
Okay.
So the majority of what we do are actually acquisitions, where it's, I would form Mike's Microphones LLC, right,
Kathy's microphone.
You stole my
I did. I
business?
stole it. Sorry, I got to him first.
and acquire the assets of Kathy's Microphones, LLC. And in doing that, I acquire obviously the customer base, all the equipment, the rights. But what I don't acquire at that point are your liabilities, right? So there's still bills that you might have to pay or legal liability that you might be responsible for.
Got it.
Some of that gets negotiated into the contract, but I'm not, acquiring your debt, for example.
You just acquired.
Whereas
it.
a merger is kind of a merger of both the assets and the debt.
That is a much clearer explanation. Thank you.
Yeah.
Who is your ideal ICP? Ideal client?
So for us, revenue-wise, businesses in the range of 2 million, up to 50 and million, and even north of that.
Okay.
So it's quite a range, right?
That is quite a range.
Average
As low as 2 million. I mean, that's
in
not
revenue.
a lot either.
I mean, we look for, I'd say around 500,000 in EBITDA, if you're kind of using that cash flow metric.
What does that mean?
So that is
Earnings before interest. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No. I'm drawing a blank. Taxes and amortization. I didn't say it right. Go ahead.
That's pretty good. Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
I missed one. Okay.
Okay. Earnings before all
Tax,
that.
yeah.
Got it.
So basically what that's looking at is if you look on an income statement, kind of the line, above taxes, of course.
Right.
Pull back interest because, a buyer might not be financing with
Okay.
debt and have to pay interest. Amortization, depreciation are non-cash expenditures on the income statement. So what you're really looking at is kind of the available cash flow of the business from an acquirer that would, flow out of the business. And then for an individual acquirer, we also look at if you're paying yourself a healthy salary, to run the microphone company. We also look at that. We would even add that back as what we call seller's discretionary earnings. So basically, that's what a buyer would see as being the available cash flow that they could either, pay themselves, pay debt, and all that has to, fit within a certain range of values to, and that's really what we look at in the valuation. What level of value would support, certain debt requirements.
It's really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Is there any certain subject matter, any certain type of business that you guys really, crush?
So out of that range,
Yeah, out of the 2 million to 50 million.
we're Viking.
From here to there.
It's quite a range. But what I would say is, that's kind of that sweet spot below where investment banks, typically would get involved.
Okay.
They're more positioned to do other stock transactions and things of that nature.
Okay.
That require broker dealer licensing. But it's above the range, where you might find businesses that, have, books and records that might not be as clean, or they might not have been in business as long,
Sure.
for example. So our average transaction, almost 20 years. Have been in business, the age of the business.
That's amazing.
But at least 10. We look for at least 10 years in business. 'Cause
Okay.
That's a solid track record. We look for businesses in like construction, specialty contracting.
Okay.
Good for us, and there's a strong buyer market for that right now.
Sure.
Professional services, could be done like advertising agencies.
Hey.
That either B2B professional services or residential services is another. Technology,
Okay.
manufacturing, distribution.
And is that all across the country then, or is there any Charleston, Mount Pleasant based?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way we're set up, we've got it's the belief of Jay and in growing the business that it's important to have local facilitation, and so we here in Charleston aren't going to represent a business out in Utah, for example.
Okay. Yeah, because you don't know the market.
Exactly, and we think it's important to be in front of the owners.
Yeah.
Because there are firms that do that market nationally.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, to really facilitate a transaction, it's important to be in the room with people.
Yeah. Well, especially you guys. You guys are all handsome. You guys are lucky.
So we basically span all the way from Wilmington down to the Savannah area. Obviously coastal South Carolina, even up toward the Midlands. That's
Okay.
loosely the Charleston territory. But each of our 18 offices has a similar. So we like to say within a 2-hour drive of the office makes sense for for those businesses.
Within the 2 hours. Okay. All right.
Exactly.
Well, we got some members that are within 2 hours of.
Oh, absolutely.
between 2 and 50 and 10 and 20 years. Yeah. That's great.
And then, just another thing generally in terms of, even if it's a business that's not quite. So, for example, some of the things we don't focus on because it's not of interest typically to our buyer base, or businesses would be like individual restaurants, for example.
Okay.
A location retail, where the owner is behind the counter, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But our typical buyers are looking for a business that has management in place, that's running the business. So a multi-location retail could make sense. A multi-location restaurant group also could make sense, for example. So we really look at it on a case by case.
Sure.
Could this potentially fit our buyer profile, which basically is, roughly 1/3 of our buyers are individual buyers.
Okay.
1/3 strategic buyers who are existing businesses already, in an industry that are looking to expand. And the other third are private equity firms that typically are, they're going to be, the ones looking at the larger businesses, probably 10 million or more in terms of revenue.
Right on. Okay, so what do I need to get my book together, right? I got to get all my orders together. And what else are you looking for from me if we're sitting in having our first meeting and I'm like, I want to do this? What do I do?
So, we'll have a get to know you and again, understand your business. But if it looks like there's, case to move forward, we would ask you for 3 months of tax returns, 3 months of, profit and loss statements, 3 months of balance sheets. But it's 3 years, right?
What's that?
Yeah, 3 years.
Yeah.
And year to date. So let's say it's, we're in September of 2026. We'd look for 3 years back plus the 9 months. And we would look at that. And essentially what we do is, because if you look at, the goal of every business owner, obviously, when they file their taxes, right, is to not pay a lot of taxes. And so you put expenses into the business that are legitimate, but realistically are not necessary, for the operation of the business in some cases, like personal vehicles, things of that. So it's, fine within the tax law, but the question still is, are there adjustments that we can make to the bottom line income to add back reasonably to come to a clear picture of an owner that was coming in not running it the same way, what would the cash flow look like?
Yeah.
And so we would do all that and come back to you, Mike, and we'd say, based on our analysis, we think the business is worth in this range. I mean, there's not a perfect number, right? But this is the range. How do you feel about that?
And you said 3 months, but did you mean 3 years?
3 years.
3 years back of bank statements and all that? Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. All right.
Has there ever been a situation where you've met with them and you've gone through the whole thing and you've advised them not to sell?
I mean, there are those cases. If usually it's more kind of the decision of the owner at that point, right? So if I presented you your valuation on the microphone business, and I said, Kathy, it's worth, in the market we see 5 million is kind of the range, what we're seeing, but maybe 4.7 to 5.3. And it's important for us to be objective about this, right?
Right.
You say, Mike, I was thinking 10.
Of course, it's mine.
Right, exactly. So then you would have a decision to make.
Right.
Do I stay with it and continue to enjoy the benefits and the cash flow, or am I at a point where I really do need to sell it? Because at the end of the day, it's important for us to be realistic. So for the businesses we sell, typically we're about 95% of the published asking price, listing price.
That's great.
It doesn't help to go out to market with a price that's higher than the business reasonably is worth.
Have you ever had an owner of a business do something to devalue the business?
Intentionally or unintentionally?
Well, maybe, I don't know, maybe a little bit of both. No names. You have to share any names.
So I once had I actually was involved in small business M&A many years ago. And that's how I actually came to know Jay and Brad. I had an office in Greenville doing mergers and acquisitions, smaller than what we do. But I had a client that was an insurance company, and they had pretty good numbers. And we were supposed to drive down to Atlanta to meet with a potential buyer. And got a call the day before from one of the owners who said the other partner is not going to be able to be here for our meeting. And I said, well, things come up. Is everything okay? And he said, well, he's in prison. Or he was in jail. He was arrested on a serious charge.
Is that a deal breaker? I don't know.
Well, that's a good question. So I called the buyer and I said, you need to know what's happened. And he said, well, that in itself is not a deal breaker. Let me come down. We'll have the meeting. He ended up not moving on it. But yeah, that was one of those. It's probably the most extreme situation. But from a business standpoint, it's really important for owners to, as they approach, that time horizon, to keep their foot on the gas, keep the business running.
Right.
And it's one of the reasons why we talk with business owners to really point out, there's some business owners that choose to do it themselves, right?
Right.
They can, list the business, or even if they have a buyer that they're already familiar with who wants to go through with the transaction,
Right.
that 250 item checklist can get
Right.
pretty onerous, right?
Yeah.
And so if a business owner is trying to work through that as he's trying to run the business, it's possible that you can take your foot off the gas. So that's one of the cautions I would emphasize, that we try to take as much of that off of the owner as we can, right?
Right.
So they
Yeah,
don't.
because I don't want to know all the details. I don't know.
Exactly.
Maybe there's certain things you don't want to tell me.
At the same time, though, when with this with the technology, the way it's going, information, the way it's just flowing at our fingertips, and especially with AI, and all these online resources, how is that affecting the way you approach the selling process? And how are owners and founders coming to you with more information that is useful, or maybe not so useful?
It can be a bit of both. I mean, there's some that might not be, quite on that bandwagon yet. But I think it's affecting it from both sides. So I think that can make for a more informed and educated seller. So, you're thinking 10 million when we present the valuation. Maybe you've now done some research where you think, okay, I really think they're probably going to tell me something closer to 5 based on my research, right? So in that way, it can not be a bad thing. It'd be a good thing.
Right.
Because it's important for us to have informed business owners that understand the process. From the buying side, there's actually, a good bit of activity. Individual buyers, it's more activity now than there have been in many years, because of folks that are tired of their corporate job. They want to get out and control their own financial and professional independence.
Especially in this area, we've met so many people who have moved from the larger cities in their corporate jobs and came down here and opened a bakery or whatever it might be, just that second part of their lives.
So what we're seeing is a lot more of those buyers, using online and AI resources to directly try to reach out to business owners before they're on the market. So I'm sure, our chamber members probably get a lot of those phone calls and emails.
Right.
And, the real challenge is how do you sort through that to really understand, because you don't want to tune it all out, because it doesn't change the fact that at some point you'll exit your business and you want to have someone you can trust to help you do that.
When is the best time to start thinking about that exit?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, in your mind am I going to sell? Am I going to grow and sell big, or am I, going to, basically have a job then that I can retire from and maybe transition it to employee. But once that decision is kind of made, you've been running your business for many years, building it to the point where you think you're getting ready, I would say at least 3 years before you're really thinking of selling.
No kidding, because I was looking for right away. I was looking for the answer, you want to know your exit strategy when you start your business, or at least have an idea about what you want to do.
Well, have an idea, sure. But there's that middle ground where you're, putting in place the processes, you're working with your CPA to make sure my books and records are good. And it's not just a matter of, good tax returns. Like, for example, if you're in a business that, like manufacturing, where you've got inventory or construction related things where you're taking money in, before the job's complete, the way you account for those sorts of things can be fairly complex in terms of what we call working capital. That's basically the receivables and payables that are part of the business. So if you've got a good handle on how to account for that, that's something to get in place, well before 3 years.
Yeah.
So that when that time comes, you can say, I've got a good way of showing, how money is flowing through the business. So, so that's kind of the middle preparation phase before you would really get engaged with Viking. But you would ideally get engaged with us a few years before, you're really looking to pull the trigger. So not always.
You got a growing business, you're doing well, you're thinking about your 5-year plan, and it might consist of exiting the business. Get a hold of Viking.
Exactly.
There we go. I just did the ad roll. Record that. Oh, we did.
But at the end of the day, we want to be a resource for business owners.
Right,
so
right.
Someone's been in business 5 years and they're not planning to sell for another 10. We're happy to have a conversation. It's not the point necessarily where you do a full-blown valuation, but it is important that they understand what that process will entail and how to prepare themselves for it, not just from a financial standpoint, but from, an emotional standpoint. I mean, that's really a big deal for a lot of business owners, that what that implies when it's time to move on.
So we like to be a resource too, Kathy. Do you have another question?
No, go ahead.
Am I bombarding? Are there any other tips, tricks, things to say that our members could take away as a resource from this podcast that we haven't talked about yet? We've covered just about everything that we talk about covering. What else can we talk about as far as how can our founders and owners better strategize their exit?
Yeah, so in a few ways, from the business owners themselves, thinking about how much of the business is about me and depends on me.
Yeah.
And so if I'm doing, half of 3 jobs in the company,
Right.
to replace me, you're going to have to hire probably 2 or 3 people.
Right.
If I can get to a position where I've got 3 managers who are basically can run the business day-to-day operationally while I'm on vacation in Italy for a month, for example.
Sign me up. Yes, please.
Now I'm still doing like strategy and thinking about how do we grow the business, but that to a buyer can be very attractive because now it's not dependent upon the owner. And even in terms of like the sales relationships,
Okay.
do the customers see the owner as the face of the business, or does he have a sales and customer service team that can carry on? So that's an important thing to think about. The other is, if the owner's name is on the business and on the vans, driving around town, that's not a deal killer by any means, but just thinking about how does that transition look like 5 or 10 years out? Could I be moving it to more, kind of a, because I built my reputation on my name, but at the end of the day, that from a buyer standpoint isn't going to make them view a good business less favorably. But if your picture's on the, the vans, then,
Yeah.
and then you're out of the picture, obviously, you're no longer there. So
Right.
that's a consideration to make early on.
Interesting.
That is interesting. That's something to think about when you're starting a business. Do you want your name or face on the business?
And we've had some that have making the move to take it off of there in advance.
And what does that do? What does that look like? Is it a negative, positive? Is it depending?
It depends on how it's done.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the John Cougar to John Mellencamp transition, right? It was many years in the making.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So there was that John Cougar Mellencamp phase, right? And so you don't want to take your name off the business right away, but you kind of phase in a branding strategy. So, there you could reach out to a chamber member who's, a marketing guru,
Sure,
right?
there's a
To
few.
help.
Well, we have a
Okay.
few of them.
Yeah.
We have 2 in the room.
Couple in the room, yeah. But
Well, not me.
oh yeah,
The other 2.
No, you're a marketing.
No, I'm not.
Guru as well.
No, I'm not. That's really interesting to me.
Isn't it,
Everything,
though?
yeah. See, I was like, look, mergers and acquisitions is really, really interesting to me now. I have to go look up some more stuff now.
It's the
honestly,
entrepreneur spirit is what really sparks us.
I do.
I think.
I think that's what it is, and I think that I kind of have a little bit of a soft spot for some of the smaller businesses that have really taken off. I know you don't do small, but I know many of Mount Pleasant businesses that are now have 4 or 5 locations. I mean, that's really awesome.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I hope that when the time comes, they're ready to go.
And do they have
They'll
brunch?
hand it off.
Do they have a brunch menu?
There's brunch menus and
Wine and
cocktails and all that
champagne?
kind of stuff going on.
Well, what you might not know about Ben Knight is that he
Oh.
actually he owned businesses previously that he bought and sold through Viking in Charlotte.
Oh wow.
And so the point there is that we have about 70 plus advisors throughout our 18 offices.
Sure.
And 70% or so of those have owned businesses themselves.
Well, if
course.
Ben Knight must have trusted you very much to come be a
Well, you didn't trust him enough. He's sitting right here.
managing
Making sure you're saying the right
partner
thing.
of his own. So
So we've been in the shoes of a lot of the business owners
Yeah.
of kind of the sleepless nights and going through that process of what it takes. And so we have empathy that that the business can sometimes feel like it's a lot worth a lot more to you than it would be to a buyer, just
Right.
because of the blood and sweat and tears that you put into it and the sweat equity.
So 7 years, is that when Ben started? working here?
End of 2017. So it's been a
How's
few
the
years.
growth been?
It's been good. I think the largest transaction Ben was telling me that we've done here in the office was 11 million.
nice.
And so we've got
One transaction. Is
yeah.
What you're saying? Okay.
and then those aren't the ones that come along, every day. But we're continuing to bring new businesses to market. Some that'll be coming in the next couple weeks.
Oh, cool.
And so we would encourage any listeners who might entertain the notion of buying a business, certainly reach out to us and check our website for available businesses, for purchase.
Well, that's my next thing. Before we go, I want you to make sure that everybody listening knows how to get in touch with you. That's
So-
the most important thing.
You can reach us in our Mount Pleasant office, 2040 Ewall Street, just across the bridge.
Can you use your radio voice for this part, please?
Sure. Or VikingMergers.com. Again, that
Vikingmergers
website address, VikingMergers.com, where you'll find actually all the listings for all of our locations.
Sure.
But you can search it by location.
I
So
love it.
That's wonderful.
Absolutely. I feel like Mount Pleasant and Charleston, but specifically Mount Pleasant, has such an entrepreneur heart, if you will. Like if you were to give a value or an explanation of what you think about Mount Pleasant, I think entrepreneurship is up there.
I think so.
Yeah,
At least from my, I mean, I've been here now for 4 months.
Right. Welcome to paradise.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. And so we're actually living in Mount Pleasant.
Oh, that's perfect.
But we love the greater Charleston area. And I think there are a lot of,
It's just the Mount Pleasant podcast. You don't have to love the most.
but there are a lot of great businesses throughout the Charleston area, and even, for further away. I mean, obviously the business you have, your cost structure, if you've got a big, distribution operation, you're not going to run that out of Mount Pleasant.
Right.
It's going to be, North Charleston or further away. So
Exactly. Do you find any resources like are you partnering with groups like the SCRA or the Harbor Entrepreneur Center or the Digital Corridor, where they have, these are incubators and they help founders, go to market, and then like the SCRA will help the founders, once they get to a certain point, grow even more. Are you working with them at all?
I know over time, Ben has built relationships with those folks. We were always happy to be a resource. We're less involved at kind of the founding stages of a company.
Right.
Unless there's a discussion on, think about how you want to build this company to ultimately sell it. But we're engaged with, obviously the chamber, other networking groups around town. There's actually a organization, Wall Street Charleston. A lot of M&A folks have come to Charleston.
Yeah. I got to look that up. That's cool.
From New York, actually. So there's an active M&A community here. Is a good way to network, and there may be cases where there may be a business that's not appropriate for us to work with that we can refer to someone like that. And there are other brokers too in the area that we will cooperate with. There may be a opportunity that's not a good fit for us, and so we can refer that to them as well.
That's smart. So you talked about being part of the Mount Pleasant Chamber. Thank you very much, and thank you for the sponsorship on the podcast. The expo is what hooked you, isn't it? Isn't it the expo? What did you feel about the expo? Give us a little soundbite testimony on your experience of the Mount Pleasant Chamber Expo, Business and Community Expo.
Yeah. So that was one of my first forays into the Mount Pleasant business environment. Having just joined, but that was a fantastic opportunity to see other businesses of all different sizes, right? Some much smaller, some larger, and to meet different business owners. I think the one across from us had just acquired the business that they were running not long ago, so they had some stories to tell about that process of acquisition. And there were others that been in business quite a while, so I think it's a good diversity of members, certainly at the expo. And
you got a lot of leads too, didn't you?
Look at Mike pushing the expo here.
You can lie. Well,
see, I told you,
expo.
I
mean,
marketing guru.
Great.
Ben, you should be like in the background.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, look at
I'm
that.
double timing for you, pal.
That's awesome.
For us, it's not as common that we would just get here's a hot lead.
Yeah.
It's more about building the awareness over time.
Yes.
Because if I want to sell you something that you can buy today, right, I'm going to obviously try to do that. But in our case, we want business owners to know, that we're out there as a resource.
Yes.
Because every day there are business owners having that conversation with themselves. Is now the time? And then who do I call? You may be in a situation where you haven't planned for the event that's causing you to sell. Maybe it's an unplanned event. We would encourage business owners to begin those conversations earlier, and not just talk to us. Talk to a number of other advisors out there.
No, not going to do that. But what I would recommend though, or ask is there like an entry point? Is there like, because I feel like I'm going to be a little overwhelmed calling Vikings Mergers and Acquisitions, talking about my business. Is there like a consultation? Can I call you, like, and get some advice maybe, or anything like that? Is there like...
Absolutely. So the most important thing to know is that any conversations we have are strictly confidential. So we would, want to understand your situation. Where are you in your business ownership life cycle?
Yeah.
Why are you calling? How'd you hear about us? There's no pressure from our standpoint, right? We, from our standpoint, we've got a lot of business owners that we're working with, and we just want to be an objective resource to business owners. And so if we can be in a position to help you and you're ready to make that move, then certainly, then we would invite the business owner into our office, come in and talk about your microphone business. And at that point, there's no, pressure obligation. You have to decide, are we someone that you would trust, with that process, and, arguably the largest transaction of your life.
Right.
Relationships matter.
Absolutely.
Well, they matter to me. That's my biggest thing.
One last hard question is, how do you get paid?
So ours is success-based, right?
Okay.
So our if we decide that we're going to do evaluation. Looks like a business that fits for us, and you're potentially trust us, then we would conduct the evaluation. At that point, that's no obligation at that point.
Wow.
Yeah, and so which is different than there are for pay evaluations, but in our case, it's really to try to give you an understanding of where you're at today, because you might decide, I want to sell in 3 more years. Now we've given you kind of a basis on which to understand how to grow your business.
Right.
But we carry the work, right? So it can take 8 months from the time we put a listing on the market to close the transaction. So all that time we're conducting the work essentially for no charge. So there are no upfront engagement fees. We're paid at the end of the transaction, and so we're interests are aligned with yours.
Yeah.
To complete,
make sure it gets sold.
Did you hear that, folks? It's not so scary to call them like that.
That's why last year we completed 88% of the businesses that we took to market were able to sell. So we want to take businesses that we're confident have buyers, and to be respectful of your time as well as ours.
That's awesome.
Do you? I don't know. We're wrapping up soon.
Yes.
Do you help them, like if they need help with their marketing? Are you helping them? Because you said you had a background in marketing.
Yeah, so that's not what we do.
Do you help,
but that's why we want to understand, who are the people out there that can help them, right? You want to grow your business, over the next few years to increase the valuation and diversify your customer base. Well, you probably need maybe if you don't have a marketing department, and maybe you need to start one.
Yeah.
If your, digital marketing or social media, is not effective, then solve that problem now. And so we would recommend potentially resources. So we're happy to identify areas that could help the business, certainly from a business standpoint, but we don't provide that kind of consulting.
So that's more attractive.
Yeah. And that's why it's important for us to network and understand who are the others out there in the community that can provide those services as we come across the need.
Love that.
Again, good partnership, right? It's all about being a good partner.
Absolutely.
So excited for you to be here today. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. I think I'm learning a lot.
Let's do the radio voice one more time with the website because it was fun.
It's www.vikingmergers.com.
I would go visit just because of how we said it.
Yeah, perfect.
And then maybe I'm going to get you some more clients, guys. We're working on it.
That's the idea.
I know. Michael Purcell, Senior Advisor, Viking Mergers and Acquisitions. A pleasure to have you. Again, everybody, so excited because Viking Merger and Acquisitions is our official first podcast sponsor. Another hand. Thank you guys so much for believing in us and obviously listening to us. And we're really, really excited to have you guys here today. Huge thank you to Charleston Media Solutions, Brian Cleary, his whole team, for recording us every month. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, you can reach out to us and we'll get back to you. And Mike has us on all the channels: Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Yeah. So you can get us any way you want.
You're not going to get away from us.
I know.
You're going to learn about Viking Mergers and Acquisitions too.
That's perfect.
Yes,
Again, Michael, thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much. Appreciate it.
Until next time, Mount Pleasant. Until next time, listeners.